Welcome all. In this lecture of biophysics, we will discuss about the topic the evolutionary stopwatch, and this particular topic will be discussed from the textbook Physical Biology of the Cell by Rob Phillips and others. All of the astonishing diversity of cellular life, that is cellular life. In cellular life there is a great diversity, and all of the astonishing diversity of cellular life currently existing on the planet, ranging from archaea living in geothermal vents deep in the ocean to giant squid to redwood trees to the east that make beer, was descended from a universal common ancestor, probably a population of cells than an individual. It means that there is a great diversity in the living organisms. We have different form of the living organisms, but one thing is common, that is they are descendant from a universal common ancestor. This last universal common ancestor, what we are referring as LUCA, last universal common ancestor, would have been clearly recognizable as cellular. It contained DNA as a genetic material. It transcribed its DNA into mRNA, and it translated mRNA into proteins using ribosomes. It also processed sugar to make energy through the process of glycolysis, and contained a rudimentary cytoskeleton consisting of an actin-like molecule and a tubulin-like molecule. We can attribute all of these features to LUCA because they are universally shared among all existing branches of cellular life. So, what we have discussed here, that is this particular facts, that is transcription process, translation process, and synthesis of glucose. So, these processes are shared among all the existing branches of cellular life. That is why we are saying that is these are the features of the LUCA. Why? Because these facts are shared by all the living organisms. However, the demonstrable differences between redwood trees and giant squids accumulated slowly over evolutionary time. So, why there is some difference between the redwood trees and giant squids? So, these differences are responsible due to the evolution. Individual cellular populations became genetically isolated from one another and underwent change and divergence to fill the different ecological niches. As the planet Earth is constantly being reshaped and remodeled by the uncounted legion of organisms that inhabit it, environmental niches are always unstable and can be changed by geological processes, global and local climate alterations, or the actions of competing organisms. So, these are the facts that are responsible between the differences in macroscopic form, and we will step by step discuss that is how evolution is performed. We can fruitfully think of evolution as a process of change in the genetic information carried by a population of related organisms. So, what is the evolution? Evolution is the process of change in the genetic material. Sometimes a single lineage can be seen as altering over time as its environment changes. More commonly, a single population will subdivide into populations that will become isolated and suffer different fates. Some will die off, some will remain similar to the ancestral populations, and some will undergo significant biochemical, morphological, or behavioral alterations over time until they are ultimately recognized as new species. And this particular highlighted portion, these are the basic ideas of Charles Darwin, and which he wrote in his famous book On the Origin of Species. How long does this evolutionary process take, and how can we measure the passage of evolutionary time? It is unsatisfying to rely on the extrapolation of mutation rates measured in artificial laboratory experiments to the evolution of species over time in the real world. So, you can perform some experiments in which you can measure the mutation rates, but the point is that it is very difficult to compare this with the real world. Why it is difficult, that I will describe. Real world conditions are much less stable or controlled than laboratory condition. So, real world conditions cannot be controlled, it is random. And furthermore, the time scales of greatest interest for studying the evolution of species are much longer that can be achieved in the laboratory by even the most patient experimentalist. So, we have already discussed about the time scale in some earlier lecture. So, that time scale is very difficult to achieve in the laboratory. So, it is quite from the common sense we can say. Traditionally, our understanding of evolutionary alterations depended upon two kinds of observations, namely comparisons among currently living species and examination of the fossil record. So, there is some fossil record which we can find in the earth, and we can compare those fossil record with the current living species. Information about the age of particular fossils can be inferred from identification of the geological strata in which they are found, and also by examining the proportions of different radioisotopes that decay at a regular rate and thereby provide information about when the rock was formed. So, the age of the fossil can be determined, and we can compare the fossils with the currently living organisms to compare the evolution of the genetic material. Comparison of living species to ascertain the degree of relatedness was carried out for many hundreds of years before the modern theory of evolution was first described. It is immediately obvious that some organisms are more closely related than others. Now, one important fact I am going to describe, just listen carefully, that is, for example, horses and donkeys are clearly more similar to each other. We know that horses and donkeys are clearly more similar to each other than either is to a dog. But horses and dogs are more similar to each other than either is to a squid. These obvious morphological differences have been the basis of the science of systematics going back to Linnaeus in the 18th century. In the modern era of molecular genetics, we can more easily ascribe a universal metric for genetic similarity among organisms based on similarities and differences in DNA sequence. So, all these similarities and differences arise due to the sequence of the DNA. This is the main fact that is responsible to the similarities or the dissimilarities in the living organisms. As a population evolves over time, its DNA complement will change by several mechanisms. So, several mechanisms are responsible to change its DNA component. First, small scale mutations or large scale rearrangements of its genome may occur. Second, the populations may acquire new genes or even entire groups of genes by horizontal transfer from other organisms. Horizontal transfer refers to cells passing genetic material to cells other than their own descendant. So, this is the fact, that is, they pass the genetic materials to cells other than their own descendants. And third, the population may simply lose large chunk of DNA. Thus, different organisms contain different complements of genes as well as sequence differences between homologous copies of the same gene. The term homologous refers to descent from a common ancestor. For example, ribosomal RNAs are homologous in all cells. Now, I will show you two figures. The first is that I already described, that is similarities and dissimilarities between some of the animals. So these are the sequence of the DNA in human, mouse, rat and dog. So if you compare the mouse and rat, the sequence is almost similar. But if you compare human and dog, so sequence is entirely different. Even you see the arrows, so sequence is entirely altered in case of dog. And in this graph it has been described, that is the x-axis is mouse chromosome and the y-axis is rat chromosome, and the linear, that is straight line indicates that the mouse chromosome and rat chromosome is almost similar. But if you compare mouse chromosome with the chromosome of the dog, then there is some differences. So this is the first figure. So this indicates actually, that is sequence of the DNA is the main thing in determining the differences and similarities in living organisms. Another figure I will describe, that is universal phylogenetic tree. This diagram shows the similarity among ribosomal RNA sequences for representative organisms from all major branches of life on Earth. The total length of the lines connecting any two organisms indicates the magnitude of the differences in their ribosomal RNA sequences. So this is the ribosomal, this is the line, this is a straight line. So this line, the total length of the lines connecting any two organisms, the length of the line indicates the magnitude of the differences in their ribosomal RNA sequences. So length of the line is very important here. For example, suppose if you compare two organisms, for example this organism and this organism, so this length of the line will indicate their differences in their ribosomal RNA sequence. So if the length of the line increases, then there will be so much difference in their ribosomal RNA sequences. So this is the figure of universal phylogenetic tree. Phylogenetic trees established by molecular methods tend to be in excellent agreement with analogous trees of similarity based on morphological or biochemical criteria, as have been established by botanists, zoologists and microbiologists over the past several hundred years. What does any of this have to do with the determination of evolutionary time? In the laboratory, we can observe that certain types of changes in DNA sequences within a population happen frequently. For example, single point mutations changing a C to a T, while others happen more rarely. Crossover events reversing the order of all the genes within a segment of a chromosome. We can even measure the time constants that characterize such events. If we assume that these kinds of mutational events happen with the same frequency in wild populations as they do in the laboratory, then we can estimate divergence times for a organizable populations based on calculating how long on average it would take to achieve the observed number of sequence alterations given known rates of sequence alteration events. So what is the meaning of this sentence? That is, in the laboratory we can do some experiments. And with those experiments we can achieve the observed number of sequence alterations given known rates of sequence alteration event. That is, we can calculate the time calculate the time of the sequence alteration events. In a few cases, these time estimates can be anchored by reference to the fossil record. We have already demonstrated it. That is, from the fossil record, we can find the rate, that is the time for the sequence change. In reality, inferring evolutionary time from sequence similarity is fraught with peril, because not all sequence alterations are equally likely to be randomly incorporated into the genetic heritage of a population of organisms. Some mutations will prove to be unfavorable for a given organism's lifestyle, and individuals carrying those mutations will be eliminated from the population by natural selection. So, this time that we have measured in the laboratory, it may sometimes differ with the real world. Why? Because of these facts. Because of this fact, that is, some mutations will prove to be unfavorable for a given organism's lifestyle. Other mutations will prove to be advantageous, and organisms carrying out these mutations will quickly outcompete other members of their species. These selection effects can make the sequence determined evolutionary clock appear to run too slow or too fast. So, that is, we can although measure the time of the sequence alteration events, but this can differ for this particular phenomena, and biologists face challenges similar to those faced by the astronomer. So, these are the challenges faced by the biologist. So, ultimately, so what we have discussed here, that is, we have discussed that is why there is a diversity in macroscopic form, and the essence of this lecture is that the DNA sequence is the main thing that is responsible for the diversity of the macroscopic form. And I hope you understood the lecture, and for further understanding I request the viewers to go through the textbook of Physical Biology of the Cell by Rob Phillips and others. And I thank you all who have listened this lecture.